Hi guys, it's Jill here, the Fat Controller, and we're talking today about how fat controllers look at and use food for fat controlling. So in other words, a fat controller will look at food more as kind of information rather than as calories. I'm my favourite author on this subject, authority on the subject, Dr. JT, talks a lot about hunger, energy and cravings. And we're going to go a little bit more into that as we go. So basically, what we tend to do when we're on a diet, what a dieter will do, will follow a plan very, very closely. And they're often so busy trying to be perfect on the plan and following that plan that they miss what it is that they actually really need to learn. And what you need to understand when you start any kind of regime, whether it be a diet, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, is that we're all very, very different. So in other words, you know, we're as different on the inside as our fingerprints are on the outside. And we're all very unique. And when we eat, every time we eat, we will get different feedback, from the same as somebody else would get different feedback. And it's not just food that does this, it's everything in our environment. So from the sound, the sight, the exercise, the sleep, any external stress that is given to us, we will respond differently. So we need to understand this, and a fat controller knows that food and exercise can affect our feedback and results. But it's not just food and exercise, there's sleep as well. So although sleep might not necessarily affect us in terms of excess calories, but of course when you don't get enough sleep, and you'll all have known this and experienced this, is that you tend to then the next day have cravings or struggle through the day with energy problems or maybe excess hunger, etc., etc. So these are things you need to consider as a fat controller. So getting your head around the fact that we're all as different on the inside as we are on the outside. So when you get something like excess hunger during the day and you think to yourself, well, I'm not eating any differently today than yesterday. Well, what did you do that was different? Maybe you did an extra exercise class, or you went for an extra walk in the day, or maybe you didn't sleep as well. Always go back, first of all, when it's hunger, think to yourself, can I eat more protein or fibre? Did I have enough protein and fibre? So in other words, if I had eggs, could I have added some spinach to that? If I had eggs and spinach, maybe I could add more eggs to that to increase the protein content. Did you have enough at breakfast and lunch? Hunger usually is something that comes from the belly. It's a growling type hunger, and it often comes on pretty slowly. Cravings, however, are more associated with forms of stress. And when I say stress, it can be too much exercise, or too little sleep, or bad sleep, too much coffee, too much alcohol, negative thinking, skipping meals, etc., etc. So cravings often come from the brain, and sometimes will not be satisfied with food. So it doesn't matter what you eat, you'll find quite often that you just continue eating and nothing seems to satisfy the cravings. So you need to really recognise that this is feedback from something that's going on, and it could be one of those things: the stress, lack of sleep, exercise, and it could always sometimes be also lack of starches. So are you eating enough carbohydrate in your diet? It's not that carbohydrates are bad, it's just that we need to get the right amounts. So a fat controller doesn't look at each meal as a separate meal. In other words, feedback from one meal can happen several meals later, or even days later. And the same thing can happen with exercise. It can what you do in the morning could affect you in the evening or the next day. If you've had a very long, heavy exercise session, how are you feeling? How did you sleep? Did you eat? What did you eat after that exercise session? Did you have starch after that exercise session? It's really important to look back, and sometimes keeping a diary can really help keep a handle on this. And you should ask to start the questions about your feedback. Ask yourself why. What can I do differently? And this will enable you to find your formula, because at the end of the day, there is no wrong way, there is no right way, there is no black or white, and there is no this way or that way. But There is your way, and this is what you have to find. No one can give it for you. A dieter wants someone to give them a formula to follow. A fat controller understands there is no one size fits all, and they've got to do the groundwork in order to make this work long term. So use your feedback to find your formula, and we start with a general rule with the starches. So there's a general rule of, say, 3 to 5 tablespoons of starches with your main meals, or you can use the bite rule as they do in the metabolic effect. Some of us will need more and some of us will need less, and at times in your life this may alter as well. So just because you think you found your formula one day, you've got to understand that if you had more stress or less sleep, then you might need to alter it again that next day. But this gets better with practice, so don't get fixated on an exact plan. Think of it as a flexible plan that works around you. Every time you eat, exercise, get stressed, every time you sleep, every time you do anything at all, whether from external sources or internal sources, there is a direct influence on our hormones and how they impact the body, and they will determine whether they store fat or burn fat. That is why fat controlling is all about certain hormones. In particular, it's insulin and cortisol. So remember, it's the beige dead food and the starches that we need to control, and the levels of stress within the body. So if you are experiencing excess hunger, the first thing to think about is, did I eat enough protein and fibre? Check its hunger. Is it really hungry? Did you eat slowly enough? Because this allows the brain to register food. And think water as well. Are you having enough water? And the possible confusion between brain hunger and belly hunger. Is it really in the stomach? Cravings, again, first off, always think about increasing fibre and protein first. If that doesn't help, then you've got to look at things like sleep, stress, exercise, and ways to measure and manage them. And it may be that you need to increase your starches, so your bites. And then if you're finding struggle with low energy levels through the day or energy slumps, and think about, again, increasing fibre and protein first. And then finally, again, if that doesn't help, then possibly think about your starches. Because if you're truly struggling with low energy, this may be due to you not eating enough of the right starches at the right times as well. So this is where we start to get a little bit more smart about our starches. You need to consider that maybe you need a little bit more starch before or after exercise, which can help you recover. Or check when your energy is at its lowest. What did you have for breakfast that day? What did you have for dinner that night? Etc, etc. So in other words, did you eat enough starch at breakfast if you're having energy issues later on in the day or with sleep? It's not as simple as just finding one formula that's going to fit right and have the same result here on out. We need to think about this on a daily basis and let it fluctuate. So, in a nutshell, fill up on the live, colourful vegetables and good quality proteins. These are going to be your the furnace to your fat burning potential. When you're full on good quality proteins and vegetables, there'll be little room for the beige dead food or starches. Fat controllers will always look at food as information and ask themselves questions such as, will this food help me burn fat or store fat? Will this food make me feel good or rob me of energy? Is this food a fat controlling food, or is it a beige dead food that's going to impact on my fat burning potential? So when our hormones are balanced, we should feel no issues with hunger, energy or cravings, and we will therefore naturally eat less and feel fitter, stronger and happier. When I say less, it's less energy, less calories, but we eat more food, so we will feel fitter, stronger and happier. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to you in the next broadcast.